Right, good morning everyone. This is the first report of the new LTP. Just a quick overview of what you're about to discuss here. The purpose of this report is to make sure that we're delivering the LTP. It's not a marketing report, it's not good news, infotainment, it's how are we doing at delivering on the LTP we signed off in June. So to do that, it focuses on the vital few goals set by ELT around service delivery, project delivery, financial performance. That's across over $1 billion a year per annum spend. It also leaves a trail to where you can go if you want more granularity. Of course, it's a high-level view, so it leaves you with a breadcrumb trail of where you can go to look if you need more detail. That's also backed by the financial and capital project reports that follow. We've got it down to about 5.5 pages. We can probably squeeze another page or so out of that, and then we'll see how we go from there, but it is flexible. Right, how do the results look? We've come down a little bit lower than we would normally hope for on levels of service at this time of year. A couple of percent of that is to do with simply missing data. We hope to catch that up in the very first month. That's not necessarily that we have failed something, just that we don't have evidence of it that we normally would want. So looking for 85, really hanging around the 80% mark. We're hoping to pull that up a bit by the next report. Capital projects, and I stress that this first one of our capital projects is actual delivery of milestones, not spend, is basically, within rounding of being on track. So capital program firing very well. A lot of that is down to the fact that we've got targets in place around project initiation and drawdown. So in other words, feeding that end of the pipe to make delivery possible. So they're looking at this stage, you can see there, drawdown by June of 25 and March of 25. They're at about the 80% mark, but those dates are a long way away, and we're about where we would expect to be. So I think that based on historical trends, we will hit those planning goals around capital, which should mean that capital keeps firing the way it has been in this last year or so. You'll see more in the PMO report, but compared to going back over, say, 4 or 5 years ago with large carry forwards, we're not in that space. And of course, value for money, activities on budget. You'll notice that the report has moved to activity budgets, which are the kind that you sign off in the LTP. So in other words, are we delivering on the LTP? There's a little bit of variation there, sort of 92% of activities are on track, but it is very early in the financial year to draw any conclusions from that. So I think that while it's perhaps not on track, might look a little bit better in a month or two. And of course, capital spend is below approved budget, but not far below. So all of those are looking reasonable or close. The two planning goals around capital, I think, will be amber next month, because red seems a little pessimistic, and we're working with PMO on that. They'll probably go amber next month, and I expect level of service may go green next month. So that's the quick overview. I'll just refer briefly, because there was a question in the pre-meeting about the scattergram there, about how that works. That's essentially bang for buck. That's a way of saying, are you delivering and where are you on spend? So the sweet spot is obviously you're delivering the levels of service that were set in the LTP, and you're doing so on budget. Most of them, as you can see there, are delivering at this early stage of the year and reasonably close to budget. Over time, what tends to happen through the course of the year is you start to develop some outliers for various reasons, floods, whatever mitigating factors. These reports will be looking at the outliers because they're the ones that we need to focus on to improve our performance. That's the, if you like, 3-minute overview. I should stress that in terms of levels of service, that's the one I want to go back to. The ELT discussion around that focused on management teams actively discussing their comments and remedial actions so that they're sharper about actual fixes. Some occasionally describe the problem but don't necessarily fix it. And so the CE's given some guidance there around sharper comments from the management teams around remedial actions. And hopefully we'll be bringing those to you in coming months.
That's great. Thank you very much for that, Peter. That's been really, really useful. The thing great about the remedial actions, I think it's fantastic we can get that fine-tuned. And what I really liked was your given your experience, your forward look on where you think it will land next month, because that's as important as what we're looking at now. So I appreciate that.
Sure.
And it's good to see if we can move those red ones to orange and then orange to green. That'd be great. Tyler had a question, and then Yanni.
G'day. Just two of them. They're both referring to page 18 on the agenda. And I'm noting that some of these service deliveries, the OARC is at 29%. That's my first question, as to, do we have an explanation as to why? Is there hold-ups? The next one's around building regulation.
Okay, could you just be a little specific for me? You said page 18, which?
Yep, so it says Otakaro Avon River Corridor, the 4-year forecast is 393,000. The service delivery is sitting at 29%, which is quite substantially lower than anything else on this chart, not including building regulation.
Yep.
I'm wondering why it's at 29%.
Okay, that is the odd one out of the whole table, and that is that while there is an activity plan in the LTP for the corridor, much of what happens in the corridor comes from Three Waters, transport, parks, and it's a peculiarity of the Act that we have mandatory groups of activity, specifically Three Waters, transport, where you can't take things from those groups and put them somewhere else.
I see.
So the Otakaro Avon River Corridor activity plan is, if you like, a core with lots of contributions from elsewhere, from Three Waters, transport, parks.
Oh, so that's what you were talking about. Okay.
So it's a bit of a shell,
Yep.
and that means that these results are not actually reflective of exactly what happens in the corridor.
I see.
The legislation demands that our Three Waters stuff sits in Three Waters, our transport stuff sits in transport. So it's there, but that budget, as you can see, the 393 is actually relatively minimal budget compared to what actually happens in there. So I'm not saying it's an artifact, but it's not reflective of what happens in the corridor.
So would that somewhat offset the median average of the service delivery targets?
If you counted all the things that happen in other major groups, those numbers would look quite different.
Cool.
I know that's not a very satisfactory answer.
No,
but
that's good.
It is how mechanically it works.
Yep, it's a very good explanation. The next one's around building regulation.
Page.
Same one, page. So
Right.
it's page 18. It's currently sitting at 64%. Would you be able to tell me why?
There are some explanations in the exceptions. I won't take your time up on them, but
I'll take a read. No worries.
if you go to some of the level of service exceptions around that activity, there are some explanations in there around resourcing and consent rates, consent levels and resourcing.
All right, I'll give that a read. Thanks so much.
Quite happy to bring back a bit of a deeper dive if you're looking for that.
Yeah, it's quite a contentious part, particularly with a lot of my constituents who have been having issues with building regulation and overspend or overcharging.
Right.
And not hitting deadlines. And then all that is comms, really, to be honest, between either the regulator and the contractor doing it.
Okay, so that's almost not so much a hitting target question as a how and process question.
Yes,
and communications.
which will then affect targets based on performance.
Okay. Well, look, given that won't jump off the page intuitively here, we might bring you back something next month.
Okay.
Based on that request.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, cheers.
Yeah, thank you. I just was interested to understand a little bit more about, on page 26, the water supply target, where it says the average consumption of drinking water in litres per resident per day, and we've got a target, and then it says data unavailable at this time of monthly update being submitted, but target last year was not met. I mean, I guess I'd kind of highlight that's one that would be quite good to see the trend, and actually, given that we've put in water meters, I guess interested to know whether that system's working, or it seems odd that we wouldn't be able to know what the information was, given that we've got a whole series of meter readings.
My understanding is that that's a temporary one for this month, and that there should be data coming. That's one of the little group I mentioned where we didn't get the data for this report,
Yeah.
but we do expect to get the data.
But if we're charging for excess water use, but we can't be told how much over or what the average is, isn't that concerning?
But like I said, I don't think it's
Yeah.
a permanent.
Unless I missed what you said, Peter, it's going to be here next month.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I mean for the residents who are being billed for excess water charges,
Yeah.
do we have a high degree of confidence that we have the accurate
But
information? around
have
that?
I completely misunderstood what you said? I thought you said that the data you need for your report is not available. That doesn't necessarily mean the data's not available. It's just not ready for your report.
I don't see it as a permanent problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Another question, Yanni?
Yeah, and just on the other one was that there's a number of comments around land drainage. This is on page 40, and effectively it's we're failing. Well, it's got a red thing. The actual metrics cannot be determined until full asset management maturity assessment is carried out. This is around the increased land drainage. I'm just wondering, do we know when that asset management maturity is going to be available?
I don't, but we can ask the question and have it put in the next report.
Yeah, and is there a plan to sort of give us an update? Because obviously it was quite bad last year. Is there a plan to give us an update of progress that's being made towards improving that?
We'll request an update as part of the next one.
Okay, thank you.
There's a few levels of service around wastewater and stormwater which have read, and it's a lot to do with the budget. And there's comments in there about bringing that back to the annual plan because we haven't basically got enough money in the long-term plan from the last decision. Will staff be bringing that sort of over the next, during that November, December period when we're having the discussions on that or presentations about it?
Broadly speaking, without knowing exactly what's behind each measure, it's possible that something might come back as part of the annual plan, but it's also possible that ELT looks at this and tries to resolve the issue before that. Sometimes an officer will say, I'd like more money, but maybe we haven't considered all the options there. So we'll try to solve it, and if we can't solve it, then it might come back as part of the annual plan. But there is a reluctance to just keep adding money, is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Can I take you back supplementary to Tyler's questions around the OARC? It's not specific to that, but rather the nature in which we are reporting. So we want our reporting to be meaningful for us, and if these figures, particularly in relation to that, actually isn't telling us the story that we need to tell, that we need to see as governors, I suppose the question is there another way of reporting or collecting the data for that particular project which is more meaningful in reporting to us? Or secondly, the question, do we need to report on it at all if it's not telling us what we need to know?
Well, first thing is OARC is by far the exception. Everything else is a clear one-to-one activity. What you see is what you get. The only reason that we can't do OARC as the same as everything else is because of that Local Government Act requirement that Transport and Three Waters have Transport and Three Waters in them. The solution there, and I think we briefly considered it for a while, would be to report the same stuff twice so that the Three Waters components are visible in OARC but also in Three Waters. And I think we started to get into murky territory with audit at that point because they didn't want the same stuff counted twice. So I'm going on recollection here. I'd need to go back and check the emails, but there was some question mark over pulling them out of where they sit, putting them under OARC, but also having them present where they're required to be by law. Does that make any sense as a one-off exception thing?
suppose there's no simple solution to it, and as long as we've got the explanation as to the variance, but I'm pleased to hear that you've looked at the issue to see whether there was any other way of reporting it, which is really what I was looking for.
It's a complicated piece of plumbing, but one way we could deal with it, to me, the best way would be to have some human commentary around what you asked. Like the numbers might be required by law to sit in these places, but the commentary could cover what you were asking.
The issue for me at a governance level is making sure that our data collection is in the right place and that our reporting is meaningful for us. And if that figure's not really telling the full story, then, you know, as I said, the question is, why is it there? But I understand. Thank you.
Not quite a question, but I was just Tyler, through your issue, maybe Peter, through Peter, rather than reporting back, you could deal directly with Peter and the staff just to sort out the road bump. Cheers.
And we can take it offline if it's easier. I've actually found the part that's related to the questions that I was asking. The first one is it says here on page 61 at the bottom of the page, inspections within 3 working days of customer request for the month of September is at 88.3%. The remedial action is the question mark that I've got here, which is additional inspections resources are being engaged by way of contractors, and remote inspection technology continues to be promoted and utilised when requested by customers. My question is, where are these contractors coming from, and are they from out of the city, and what additional costs are incurred when using those contractors?
Okay, that's definitely one I'll have to work with the head of service. We'll come back to you with a response. Now that there's specific questions, that should actually be pretty cut and dried.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. They're going to do quarterly reporting in the first week of November, and we will be able to provide an update then.
Okay, thanks, Pete. And the last question is, in the same page at the top, continue with the end-to-end customer experience project. I'm wondering if we could, or I could get some info on that.
Okay, for sure.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's just around similar to the question that I asked last month, but getting the list, the high level spend by unit. I mean that's good, but what we don't get is a percentage of projects that have gone over versus a percentage of which haven't. So
Deal with that in the capital report.
yeah, sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, thank you very much, Peter. That's been really good, and I think the way you've done it and prompted so many questions is a good reflection on the work you've done. So I appreciate that. So Tyler's happy to move this, and Tim looks like he's happy to second. All in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Cheers. Rightio, Russell.